Hello, and welcome to the 2024-25 Cash for College webinar hosted by the California Student Aid Commission. My name is Sarah Beth Brooks, and I'm the Outreach and Marketing Coordinator for the California Student Aid Commission, which is also known as CSAC. This recording is current as of January 22nd, 2024. We have updated slides to provide the most current information about the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act application. Most of this presentation will be the version that was presented in December, but a couple of the slides will have updated information for you. So we're going to start by talking about why you should go to college. These are some of my colleagues here at the Commission and their educational journeys. I do want to point out that everyone takes their own path through higher education. For myself, I went to community college after high school, and then I went into the workforce. I returned to school in my late 20s, and I finished my bachelor's in communication studies when I was 31. Your educational path might look different than other people's, and that's okay. But one thing is for sure, a college education can help you get ahead in a lot of careers. Here are a few ideas we don't think of very often. Social media influencers can benefit from college coursework in business, marketing, and communications. Video gamers may want to pursue game design or software engineering, and athletes can major in things like sports management, sports medicine, or kinesiology. There are plenty of ways to turn your passions into purpose with a college degree. College campuses also have more than just classes and libraries. Campuses are community hubs that provide services beyond the classroom. Most colleges have basic needs resource centers available that include information about helping you find housing, accessing food services and transportation, as well as counseling services. You can even get physical or mental health services at the health centers on most college campuses. There are also service centers for different types of learners. Disabled students, first-generation students, undocumented students, and students who have children of their own can all access unique resource centers on their college campuses to help them succeed both in college and in life. Foster youth services are also available on most college campuses, and these students do qualify for additional aid too. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. We know that college can be tough for minority students. On college campuses, there are student support centers for students from different minority groups. As a student in these centers, you'll find staff members and other students that resonate with your story and can assist you in overcoming the challenges you may face. They can offer additional support and services that are tailored to you and your situation. Now, let's talk about the big topic for this presentation, which is applying for financial aid. We're going to cover some basics that apply to all students, and then we'll dive into the California DREAM Act application, or CADAA, and then the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Now, in California, we have two applications for financial aid. Students should complete one or the other, but not both. U.S. citizens and green card holders will complete the FAFSA. Qualified immigrants, which include undocumented students with or without DACA, and students with temporary protected status, can complete the CADAA application. In the 24-25 year, the application period is from December 2023 to April 2nd, 2024. I want to let you know that some colleges do have an earlier deadline than April 2nd, 2024, and so you need to check with your college to see if you need to finish your FAFSA or your California DREAM Act sooner than that. For community college students, the deadline for this application cycle is September 3rd, 2024. Now, lots of people call their financial aid money their FAFSA money. But FAFSA is only an application for many different types of financial aid. When you complete a FAFSA or a CADAA, you're applying for several federal and state financial aid programs, including the Pell Grant and the Cal Grant. These are grants that you don't have to pay back. For FAFSA filers, you're also applying for student loans, but completing a FAFSA does not mean you are agreeing to take student loans. However, you might be offered them as part of your financial aid package. Your application will help determine your financial need. Now, I want to let you know that most high school seniors under the age of 24 are considered dependent for the purposes of financial aid, and so they do need to provide parent information when completing the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. Even if your parents don't claim you on their taxes, even if you live on your own and pay all your own bills, you might still be considered dependent for financial aid purposes. Now, how is that possible? What I want you to walk away from this presentation understanding is that tax dependency and financial aid dependency are two different things. They're very different from one another. For financial aid dependency, you need to answer these questions. It doesn't matter who claims you on your tax return or if you file taxes independently yourself. What matters is your answers to these questions and if you were born before January 1st, 2001. Now, students born before January 1st, 2001 will automatically be considered independent for the 2024-25 application cycle. Everyone else will need to answer these questions in order to determine if they are dependent or independent for financial aid. If you answer no to all of these questions, you are considered dependent for financial aid, and your parents will need to provide their financial information on your financial aid application. Most high school seniors are going to answer no to all of these questions, and they will be considered dependent for the purposes of financial aid and completing a FAFSA or a California DREAM Act application. We recognize that families can be made up of all different types of arrangements, but for financial aid, a parent means something very specific. It needs to be your biological mother or father, or someone who legally adopted you. A step parent, an aunt or an uncle, a foster parent, a grandparent, an older sibling, or a legal guardian cannot be considered your parent. If one of your parents is living and it's safe for you to contact them, you need to have them sign the application. Now, we understand that in rare cases, there is no contact between a student and both of their parents. These are really difficult situations like students who have been kicked out of their homes for coming out as LGBTQIA, refugees and asylees who can't contact their parents back in their home country, victims of human trafficking, parents who are incarcerated, abusive parents who are no longer in the lives of their students. These are all really difficult life circumstances, and in those cases, the student can select unusual circumstances on the FAFSA and be considered provisionally independent. That student will then later need to provide documentation about their contact with their parents to the financial aid office in order to be able to be considered independent. The Commission cannot override dependency status, so if this case applies to you, then you will need to speak specifically with the financial aid office at the college because they are empowered to override your dependency status. I also want to point out here that if you are in a legal guardianship or if you were a foster youth before the age of 18, then you are already considered independent. You don't need to include a parent information on the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. A really important question that students ask us is how much money can I get for school? This is a quick way to conceptualize how much money you might be able to receive. Now, the cost of attendance is determined by each individual college, and it includes the tuition, fees, books that you might need for classes, as well as your living expenses. That is publicly available information that you should be able to find on the college's website. The Student Aid Index is replacing the expected family contribution starting in the 2024-25 year. Other financial assistance includes things like private scholarships or other funding that you may be receiving to help you go to college. When you take these numbers together, the basic equation is the cost of attendance minus the student aid index minus other financial assistance equals financial need. It's a little more complicated than this, but this is a basic way to conceptualize how financial need is determined. Once you have financial need determined, then it's the financial aid office's job to get as close as possible to that number using grants, scholarships, institutional aid, and sometimes student loans. I want to let you know that emergency aid from the government is no longer a factor in reducing a student's financial assistance. This is important for this year especially because we're reporting tax year 2022, and in 2022, many people received emergency assistance via COVID funding from the federal government. So that specific assistance is no longer going to count against you when determining your financial need. I just gave you a preview of this, but some of you might be wondering which taxes the student and the parent need for their applications. This is a great question. The financial aid application will ask for tax information from 2 years ago. Now, most people haven't filed taxes for 2023 by the time it's time to apply for financial aid, which is why we use prior year taxes. Almost everyone should have their taxes done from 2 years ago and completed and submitted. And so that's why financial aid applications use prior year tax information so that everyone has their financial information submitted and ready to go. You can't change this and decide to submit your 2023 taxes just because you've already done them. You have to use the 2022 taxes for the 2024-25 application. Now, if the student is attending college in the fall of 2024, an easy way to do this is to subtract 2 from the 2024 year, and the taxes needed for the CADAA or the FAFSA is from 2022. Now, starting in the 2024-25 academic year, FAFSA will require direct data exchange with the IRS for all FAFSA filers. CADAA filers will continue to input their financial information manually. The direct data exchange for FAFSA is intended to reduce the number of errors that families make while inputting the wrong information or the wrong tax year. Now, everyone completing a FAFSA or a California DREAM Act application is applying for Cal Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship. Here you can see the different types of Cal Grants and the funds that they provide. On the right side, you can see the income ceilings for the Cal Grant for the 2024-25 academic year. Income is one part of the financial aid equation. So if your family makes under the income listed, you may be eligible for a Cal Grant. This is adjusted gross income based on what's on your tax returns. There are 3 different types of Cal Grants. Cal Grant is needs-based and merit-based, so your financial need and your GPA are both taken into consideration. The chart on the left shows the chart on the left shows all the Cal Grants, and the chart on the right shows the income and asset ceilings. The maximum amount for each Cal Grant depends on which school the student is attending and which type of Cal Grant they're eligible for. Cal Grants A and B are for 2-year and 4-year degree programs, and Cal Grant C is for vocational or technical programs. Now, everyone who applies for financial aid in California is automatically considered for the Middle Class Scholarship as well. This scholarship is only available at the University of California and the California State University campuses, as well as a few community college campuses where the student is enrolled in a bachelor's degree program. Students with family income and assets up to $226,000 may be eligible for the Middle Class Scholarship for the 2024-25 academic year. You don't need to do something special on your FAFSA or your California DREAM Act application, except complete it on time in order to be able to be considered for this scholarship. Now, everyone who applies for financial aid using the FAFSA or the CADAA will also be applying for the California Community College Promise Grant. Back when I was in community college, this used to be called the Board of Governors waiver or the BOG waiver. If you're going to attend community college, this grant can cover your tuition. Now, eligibility is determined automatically when you complete one of the two financial aid applications. I want to remind you that you need to complete a FAFSA or a CADAA every year that you'll be in college in order to get this grant and the other grants that we're talking about today. Community college students may also be able to receive the Student Success Completion Grant if they're enrolled in more than 12 units a semester. This grant is only available for students who qualify for Cal Grant. The purpose of the grant is to help you cover your living expenses while you're attending community college full-time. Students enrolled in more than 15 units per semester can receive $4,000 per semester to help them with their living expenses while they attend school. I do want to provide you an update on selective service. This is where people have to register, male students have to register for federal government service, military service, if they're between the ages of 18 and 25. Selective service is still a federal requirement. However, it has been removed as a requirement for financial aid. This question used to appear on the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act application to confirm that students had enrolled in selective service. Eligible students are still required to enroll in selective service, but they're no longer required to report that they have done that to be considered for financial aid. Now, I want to let you know that we have regional organizations all across the state to help you succeed in completing your financial aid application and getting into college. Our CalSOAP and RCOs are available to provide you with more information and to support you locally. The stars and boxes show our regional coordinating organizations, or RCOs, and the location markers show our CalSOAP chapters. I want to remind you that this help is free. You should never have to pay someone to help you complete your financial aid application. In fact, it's illegal for paid preparers to charge you money to help you complete the FAFSA. Don't hesitate to contact the closest RCO or CalSOAP. They're all equipped to help you with your CADAA and your FAFSA. Let's turn our attention to one of the financial aid applications now. California is one of 17 states that provides a path to financial aid for undocumented students. We want to stress to undocumented students and families that the information shared on the California DREAM Act application is protected and will not be shared with any other government agencies. Students should only complete the application that's for them, the FAFSA or the CADAA, but not both. We're going to talk about the CADAA first today. The California DREAM Act application, which is often referred to as the CADAA, allows qualified, undocumented, and non-resident students to receive certain types of financial aid in the state of California. CADAA is administered by the California Student Aid Commission. That's us. And it's a safe way for undocumented students to apply for financial aid because the information is only used for financial aid purposes. We do not share the information that we collect with any other government agency. Now, students who qualify for CADAA may or may not have DACA status, and that doesn't impact their ability to apply for financial aid. DACA is a federal program which recognizes there are undocumented immigrants who were brought to the United States as children. Those who apply for DACA and meet the eligibility requirements are protected from deportation for 2 years and are issued a Social Security card so that they can work legally in the United States. But a student who has DACA status or who does not have DACA status, either of those students could still qualify for the California DREAM Act application. Students who are going to complete the CADAA application need to be eligible under AB 540 requirements. Now, AB 540 is a law that was passed by our state legislature and signed into law by the governor, And the requirements outlined in AB 540 are the requirements that a student must meet in order to qualify to complete the CADAA. It's basically two requirements. One is that you must go to school in California for at least 3 years. Now, that can be K through 12 or community college. So, if you went to high school for all 4 years in California, a student would meet this requirement. You can also meet it with non-consecutive years. So, if you went to school in 3rd grade, 7th grade, and 10th grade, you meet the requirement. The second requirement is that you have to have graduated high school in California or have the equivalent of a high school diploma, including the GED and the HiSET, the California High School Proficiency Exam, one of those. Now, starting in 24-25, students will complete an affidavit as part of the CADAA, which declares that they are now or will be seeking a path to legalize their immigration status. This used to be a separate document that students would have to complete, but now it will be part of the application. The California DREAM Act application is being enhanced to reflect the changes that are also coming to the FAFSA. We are going to be looking at some of the screenshots for the new California DREAM Act application during this presentation. The homepage can be found by going to the California Student Aid Commission homepage or going directly to the link you see at the bottom of the screen here, which is dream.csac.ca.gov. Once on the site, students and parents can click on the California DREAM Act resources page, where they'll find all the resources they might need pertaining to the application and more. New students starting their very first CADAA should click on Start on the bottom left-hand corner. Returning students who are renewing their application for the new academic year should click the Login button. In the student section, it's critical that students spell their name the way that it is spelled on their legal documentation and provide the correct address and date of birth. We have extended the length of these fields in order to allow students who have multiple last names to be able to complete their name correctly. Students need to make sure that their name and date of birth information matches exactly what is on file at the high school and what is on their college applications, because all three of those pieces of information, the high school GPA, the financial aid application, and the college application, need to find each other in the system so that the student can be awarded an aid package. Students will be asked the state of legal residence and when they became a legal resident of such state. This is crucial to being eligible for AB 540 or not, because a student needs to be a California resident in order to be able to be eligible for AB 540. Students will be asked to manually report their financial information. CADAA does not have direct data exchange with the IRS the way FAFSA does. If a student did not work and will not file taxes, they can select No here. They will still be asked to report what income they made in the reporting year, which is 2022. But if the student made no income in 2022, they can put 0. Now, if the student did file taxes, they will need to enter their financial information as prompted in the financial section. It will be helpful for a student to have a copy of their tax documents available to answer the questions. Something new in the 24-25 year is that we are now asking on the CADAA if the student is interested in information about the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant, or DSIG. Now, we will go over DSIG later in this presentation, but essentially it's a program that allows qualified applicants to do community service work and receive a grant. It's similar to work study, but it's an option for our qualified immigrants and undocumented students. I want to remind you that checking this box does not mean you have applied for DSIG. Checking this box just means you are interested in more information. There is a separate application for DSIG. Students will also list up to 20 colleges on this slide. We strongly recommend that students list at least one University of California, one California State University, and one California Community College in this section. Listing schools here does not mean you are applying to those schools, and it also doesn't mean you're committing to go to one of those schools. It just allows these schools to have your financial need information so that they can tell you how much financial aid you might get if you go there. As I said earlier, the 2024-25 CADAA now includes the AB 540 affidavit. This is brand new. The affidavit will be embedded into the CADAA, and students will be asked questions to see if they qualify under AB 540. Remember, students have to qualify for AB 540 requirements in order to receive state-based financial aid available through the CADAA. Students will also be prompted to enter the school or schools that they attended in California. We also want to advise students that they will need to follow up with their financial aid office and their college bursar's office to make sure the affidavit is on file in both places. The bursar's office is important because that's where you pay your tuition, and they should have an AB 540 student listed as paying in-state tuition rates. So students have to follow up about their AB 540 status with the financial aid office and the bursar's office. Parents will be required to put in personal identifiers, non-financial information, and their financial information for the tax year 2022. They'll need to put their first and last name, their date of birth, an address, phone number, things like that, as well as the number of people in the household. Now, to determine the parent's household size, you want to include the student, the parent or parents, the number of other children in the family, and anyone else who lives with the parents who receive more than half of their support from the parents between July 1st, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. Sometimes this is an aunt or an uncle, a grandparent, somebody who is reliant on the parents for their financial situation. Now, the number of people who are not your parents' children, number of people who are not your parents' children, but who live in your house and don't receive more than half of their income from your parents, those people do not need to be counted in your family size. So it includes you, your parents or parent, your other siblings, other children who live in the house, and other adults who live in the house who rely on your parent or parents for more than half of their income. Now, parents will also need to report basic information like their marital status as well as their state of legal residence. This is the state that they live in. They should input the date they became a resident of the state that they reside in. Remember, CADAA does not have direct data exchange, so students and parents will need to input their 2022 tax information manually. It can be helpful to have a copy of the tax documents in front of you as you complete this section of the CADAA. If both parents worked in 2022, both parents will need to input their tax information on CADAA. Now, if the parent didn't file taxes in 2022, they can select No on this screen. They will be asked to input their income for 2022, even if that income is zero. Now, if parents indicate that they have not or are not going to file taxes, they will still have to make sure they report any of the earnings that they have made in the reporting year. If they made more than what the IRS considers to be the threshold for filing taxes, the application will be flagged, and the parents will need to get an ITIN in order to file taxes for 2022. This chart here on the screen shows you the filing thresholds for 2022. Now, a common error on the CADAA is that both students and parents are reporting the same dollar amount for taxes paid as they report for adjusted gross income. Now, the language in this question can be difficult to understand, and it's something that can hold up the student's application. Please pay close attention to reporting student tax information versus parent tax information and reporting adjusted gross income versus taxes paid. Paying close attention is important so that the application can be processed correctly. One of the biggest changes coming to the CADAA in 24-25 is how the signatures are collected. Students and parents will no longer be directed to an external CSAC parent signature page. Instead, students will be able to provide student and parent signature in the same section. Parents will no longer need a 4-digit system-generated PIN to sign their student's CADAA. Instead, the signature section of the application will ask the student to select only one parent who is able to provide a signature. Like the student, the selected parent will affirm that the information that they provided on the application is true and correct to the best of their knowledge to generate an electronic signature. For instances where a parent is unable to provide a signature with the student, there will be an option for the student to provide the parent with a link to the external CADAA parent signature page. There, they will answer a few basic questions about themselves and their student for our system to match them to the student's record. In this external option, a parent will also not need a PIN anymore. As is the current case, the student's application will not be considered complete until both a student and a parent signature are provided. A common question that we get is, what if the student's parents live in another country and the student does not live with them? As we've covered, students who are under the age of 24 and do not meet any of the other criteria to be considered independent for financial aid purposes will have to provide parent information on the FAFSA, even if the parent lives in another country. The parent must contribute to and sign the application. These parents will input their foreign income in US dollars on the financial aid application. I want to remind you that widowed step-parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, foster parents, siblings, or legal guardians are not considered your parents for financial aid purposes unless they have legally adopted you. If you can't get in touch with your parents in another country for some reason, you will need to select the Unusual Circumstances button on the Student section of the CADAA or the FAFSA, and then you will need to speak to the financial aid office at your college in order to provide them documentation. They have resources and the authority to help override your dependency status. Now, CADAA students can also qualify for the Dreamer Service Incentive Grant, which we talked about a minute ago. DSIG provides them an opportunity similar to work study. Students do have to be eligible for Cal Grant B, even if they're receiving a Cal Grant A, which means they need to qualify based on income as well as GPA. Students also have to complete a separate application to enroll in this program. They will complete 100 to 150 hours of community service per term, depending on if they're quarter or semester students. And then they'll be given a stipend at the end of the at the end of the academic year for their volunteer service. That stipend can be up to $4,500. The California Dream Loan Program helps CADAA students replace what they might have received from federal student loans. Now, these students must attend a California State University or University of California, and they need to be Cal Grant eligible. The loan amounts are up to $4,000 per academic year, and the interest rate for these loans matches the federal rate for the same year. Students should talk to their financial aid offices if they are eligible to receive this loan. Most public universities have a Dreamer Resource Center or an Undocumented Resource Center on campus, which provide a free and safe community that allows people who are undocumented to focus on school and know they have support. These centers are not just for DACA students, but for any immigrant student who is looking to connect with community and get support in completing their college education. I want to point out our partners at Immigrants Rising, which is a community-based organization that CSAC works closely with. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see their to-do checklist, which we recommend undocumented and qualified immigrant students use to help them calculate their attendance to college. The most important element is to complete a CADAA as soon as possible. Immigrants Rising can help you with the process, whether it's helping you complete your CADAA, getting connected with resources at Dreamer Success Centers, or calling CSAC student support to look at your account to see if there are any holdups or errors. We encourage folks that are undocumented or come from mixed status families to reach out. Immigrants Rising and the Commission are both here to help. Now let's talk about the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Students who are U.S. citizens or green card holders can complete the FAFSA and apply for federal and state-based financial aid. Many of you know that there are big changes coming to the 2024-25 FAFSA. We are going to talk about the changes in detail today. The U.S. Department of Education oversees the FAFSA, which you can find at studentaid.gov. The changes to the 2024-25 FAFSA are the biggest changes to financial aid in the last 40 years. These changes have been implemented for the 24-25 academic year. They include a reduced number of questions and a requirement for data exchange with the IRS. Another new change is that all contributors, including undocumented parents, will need a studentaid.gov account, which is also called an FSA ID. The FSA ID requires identity verification, either through a social security number or multiple choice identity verification questions for people who do not have a social security number. Another new change is that students can now list up to 20 schools on their FAFSA, when it used to only allow 10 schools to be listed. The online FAFSA will be available in 11 widely spoken languages. There's also a new law I referenced earlier that says that paid preparation for the FAFSA is no longer allowed. The Commission and other financial aid agencies, high school counselors, college admissions counselors, college financial aid offices, and community-based organizations are all here to offer you free resources and support as you complete your financial aid application. You should never have to pay for help to get financial aid. Another new thing is that the questions about housing choice and work study are now handled by the financial aid office. So you will need to reach out to your college and talk to your financial aid office if you want federal work study or you need housing options. Now, an FSA ID is a free account on studentaid.gov that allows you to complete and sign the FAFSA. Any contributor to FAFSA will need their own account. This includes students, parents, and maybe spouses. All students need an FSA ID or studentaid.gov account to complete their section of the FAFSA and sign it. Remember, most students will be dependent for the purposes of financial aid. If the student is dependent, then at least one parent needs an FSA ID. This includes undocumented parents who will have to get an account on studentaid.gov starting with the 2024-25 academic year. Here's some more information on which parent or parents need an FSA ID. If the biological parents are married and they file taxes together, only one parent needs an account and can report on behalf of both parents. But if the parents didn't file taxes together, then both parents need an account and both parents will complete their own sections of the FAFSA in order to contribute on behalf of their students. Now, if the parents are unmarried, but they live together, then both parents need an account on studentaid.gov and both parents will independently contribute to the FAFSA. If the parents are divorced or separated and they don't live together, then the parent who provides the most financial support for the student in the last 12 months needs an account. This is a change from previous years. It used to be that the parent who had the most custody of the student would complete the FAFSA. Now it's the parent who provided the most financial support for the student. If that's split 50-50, then you have the parent who has the higher income complete the FAFSA. If the parent who is reporting is remarried, then the new spouse's income and asset information needs to be reported on FAFSA. So the biological parent and the step parent have to report on FAFSA. If they file taxes jointly, one of them can file a FAFSA on behalf of both. However, if the parent and step parent file taxes separately for any reason, then both the parent and the step parent need an account to independently complete their own sections of the FAFSA. Now, if a student is independent for financial aid, they still need a studentaid.gov account. Remember that tax dependency and financial aid dependency are two different things. Unless the student is married or answered yes to one of the dependency questions on the slide earlier, or they were born before January 1st, 2001, they are considered dependent for financial aid. If the student is married, then the student's spouse's information also needs to be reported. If the student and their spouse file taxes together, then only the student needs a studentaid.gov account. But if the student and their spouse file taxes separately for any reason, both the student and the spouse need a studentaid.gov account, and the spouse will need to contribute in a separate section of the application in order to report their income and assets. Remember, once someone has a studentaid.gov account, it's theirs for life. If a parent already has a studentaid.gov account from when they were in college or from an older sibling who completed the FAFSA, they can use that same account. They do not need to register for a new account. We strongly recommend that everyone use a personal email address for their FSA ID or their studentaid.gov account. When you use a work or a school email address, you might lose access to that account over time, and it makes it harder for you to recover your password or access the emails that were sent to you about financial aid. So it's best to use a personal account such as Google, Hotmail, Yahoo, or even AOL. Now, parents who do not have a Social Security number will still be required to sign up for an FSA ID or studentaid.gov account. Instead of the Social Security number, these parents will answer multiple choice questions about themselves that include information they should know, such as previous addresses or employers, banking relationships, phone numbers. These questions will help verify their identity. Parents without a Social Security number cannot sign up for a studentaid.gov account until the FAFSA is released sometime in December 2023. They cannot sign up until the FAFSA is released. However, once the FAFSA is released, parents without a Social Security number will be able to file for a studentaid.gov account and complete the FAFSA on behalf of their students. Now, some common mistakes that we see are that parents and students try to use a shared email account for their studentaid.gov account. Each account needs its own unique email address. Additionally, sometimes parents and students will switch their Social Security numbers or make passwords for each other. We strongly suggest that each parent and student create an FSAID studentaid.gov account separately from each other and complete the process before the other one starts the process of creating their account. If parents or students have problems completing the FSAID process, they should reach out to the FSA Information Center at 1-800-433 3243. CSAC does not oversee the FSAID process, and we can't help people troubleshoot their problems. It's a federal website, so you will need to call FSA if you have problems completing the sign-up process. Now, can students apply for FAFSA if their parents don't have a Social Security number? I've kind of answered this question, but yes, the parent's citizenship does not affect a student's ability to complete the FAFSA, so parents are not required to have a Social Security number. They will use identifying questions to get a studentaid.gov account, and those identifying questions will verify their identity so that they can complete and electronically sign the FAFSA. There is no more paper signature page for the FAFSA. It used to be that undocumented parents had to print out a paper signature page, sign it, and send it in to the federal government. That process is over. It's no longer going to exist. Instead, all parents will need to sign the application electronically using their studentaid.gov account, regardless of citizenship status. Now, for students completing a FAFSA, these are some of the types of federal aid that are available to you. This chart shows 6 different types of federal aid that are pretty common, which include the Pell Grant, the federal SEOG grant, the work study, and different types of loans. The Pell Grant, SEOG, and work study are funds you don't have to pay back. Also, colleges offer institutional aid and scholarships, and you also don't have to pay those back. So you can apply for aid that is beyond the federal or state aid we're talking about today. Now, for work study, I want to remind you that the student needs to call the financial aid office to find out more about work study eligibility. That's new this year. It used to be you could check a box on the FAFSA, and they have removed that box. Now, the bottom 2 on this chart are federal loans. And if you need them to pay for school, we do recommend that you borrow using federal loans instead of private loans from banks or other financial institutions. If you need help understanding these loans, you should talk to the financial aid office at your college of attendance, who can explain loans to you in more detail. The TEACH grant, which is also listed on this slide, is a grant that's for students who are studying to become teachers. It's a specific grant that allows teaching students to get up to $3,772 as long as they sign a service contract to work in underperforming schools after they graduate. Let's look at some of the student section of the FAFSA. Starting in 2024-25, all contributors to the FAFSA will be required to consent to Direct Data Exchange, or DDX, with the IRS. Students will be asked to consent to having tax information for the 2022 tax year shared with studentaid.gov and the FAFSA. Even if the student did not file taxes in 2022, they will still need to consent to data exchange, which will confirm that they did not file taxes. Students who are 17 years old should be able to complete this section, although they are not yet 18 years old. If students or parents refuse to consent to this section, the student will not be considered for any form of federal or state financial aid. Students will be asked to report demographics about themselves. The race, gender, and ethnicity questions are for research purposes only. They are optional questions, and the answers to them will not affect financial aid determinations. These are just for research purposes. However, the student will also have to report if they will be a high school graduate by the start of the 2024-25 academic year and the name of their high school. Those are not optional questions. If the parent was killed in a line of duty, then the student should also report that. In California, we do have a specific grant for students whose parents were killed in the line of duty. Most students will be asked information about their parents. This will help a student determine which parent or parents must contribute to the FAFSA. The parent wizard will ask several questions and tell you which parent you need to have report information on the FAFSA. You can see there are a number of different parent options listed here on the screen. These are the different outcomes from the parent wizard. Students should report the parent's marital status as of the day the FAFSA is being completed. In cases of divorce, the student will be asked to invite the parent who has provided the most financial support in the last 12 months. Only that parent will need to contribute to the FAFSA. If that parent is remarried, the step-parent will also need to report financial information on FAFSA. If the parent and the step-parent file taxes together, jointly, only the parent will need to contribute on behalf of both the parent and the step-parent. However, They file taxes separately for any reason, the step-parent will need a studentaid.gov account and will need to contribute to the FAFSA. The 2024-25 FAFSA is moving to a role-based application. This is different than in previous years. What it means is that the parent, the student, and the spouse have different independent sections of the application, and they can be completed separately without waiting for the other person to take action. For students whose parents need to contribute information to the FAFSA, either the student or the parent can begin the FAFSA process and invite the other one to contribute. This is the Invite Contributor screen, where a student is inviting a parent contributor. The student will need to provide the name, date of birth, social security number, and an email address. The same screen will appear if a parent starts the application first and needs to invite the student. Now, the email address used on this screen does not need to be the same email address used to create a studentaid.gov account. For students whose parents are undocumented, please select the My Parent Doesn't Have an SSN box. Completing this section will automatically generate an email to the parent or student and invite them to contribute to the FAFSA. Users will be able to continue to fill out their section of the FAFSA while waiting for other contributors to complete their section in the new role-based application process. One of the big changes this year is that students can now enter up to 20 schools on both FAFSA and the California DREAM Act application. It doesn't matter what order they enter the schools in. Nobody's going to tell the schools that a student put them 4th or 5th on their list. FAFSA and CADAA just tell a school that a student has applied for financial aid. If the student is applying to a school that requires early admission or has a priority deadline before the state priority deadline, they do need to include that school on this list. Now, adding schools to the application does not mean that a student is applying to that college or committing to go to that college. Later on, students will be asked to commit to a specific school by the school, not FAFSA. Adding schools to the financial aid application allows students to compare costs. They can see how much financial aid they can get at any one school. We suggest that students add several California schools to their application. It's free and it's easy, and it doesn't take much time. Students won't know how much money they can get to stay in state without adding California colleges to the application. One more note on this screen. Sometimes the school name is listed differently here than what you might think it is. For example, Sacramento State versus California State University, Sacramento. You will need to use the formal name of the school, and you may have to search a couple of times to find the school you want to add. Once you've completed the school selection screen, this screen will allow you to go back to the other pages of the application to review them if you need to make changes before you sign the application. Because the application is role-based, parents cannot see what the students input in their section, and students cannot see what the parents input in their section. The same is true for spouses. If the parents are filing FAFSA separately from each other, or if the student and the spouse are filing FAFSA separately from each other, nobody can see what's on the other person's section of the application. Now we're going to look at some of the parent pages at this time. Starting in 24-25, all contributors to the FAFSA will be required to consent to Direct Data Exchange, or DDX, with the IRS. Parents will be asked to consent to having tax information for the 2022 tax year shared with studentaid.gov and the FAFSA. Even if the parent did not file taxes in 2022, they still need to consent to the data exchange, which will confirm that they did not file taxes. If a parent refuses to consent, the student cannot be considered for federal or state financial aid. This includes undocumented parents who may or may not have filed taxes. They will also have to consent to DDX with the IRS in order for their students to be considered for federal or state financial aid. If parents are married and filing jointly, only one parent needs to contribute to the FAFSA and consents to DDX on behalf of both parents. Remember, if the parents are married and filing separately, each parent will individually complete the FAFSA, and then they will individually consent to their tax information being brought over into the application. Parents will be asked if their family has received any form of federal assistance benefits, including the Earned Income Tax Credit, Medicaid, Supplemental Security Income, or free or reduced price school lunch. If anyone in the immediate family has received any one of these benefits, then the family is exempt from reporting their assets on the FAFSA. Now, there has been some confusion about the free lunch answer on this question. In California, all public and charter school students receive free school lunch. We have a universal program in this state. Now, very recently, the U.S. Department of Education issued new guidance on this question. Only students who qualify based on an income eligibility guideline set forward by the U.S. Department of Agriculture can select free or reduced lunch on this page. Universal school lunch programs do not make someone eligible to select free and reduced lunch on this page. Now, if a family reports that anyone in the family received any of these benefits programs, remember that means that the family is exempt from reporting assets. It does not mean that the parents won't have to report their income. Everyone has to report their income, regardless of how they answer this question. But when you don't report your assets, your financial need may be larger and you may qualify for more aid. Parents may see one or both of these screens requesting additional financial information. You should report IRA payments, grants reported as income, and foreign earned income exclusion here. Now, if the parent is completing the assets page of the FAFSA, do not report the value of the family home as part of the real estate investments. The family home is the home that the parents own and live in. Any second property the parents own for any reason, whether it's a home or an investment property, land, a rental property, any second property must be reported as an investment property. Another change on the 2024-25 FAFSA is that the net worth of all businesses and family farms must be reported as an asset. There were some exemptions before for very small businesses, but those exemptions have gone away, and now all small businesses must be reported on FAFSA. Child support is also considered an asset now, and since assets are weighed less heavily toward financial need, this is actually really good news for parents who receive child support. You will report child support for the previous calendar year. So if you are completing the FAFSA in 2024, you should report the child support received in 2023. Now, the parents can also review their sections of the FAFSA, but remember, they can't see other contributor sections, including the students section. After the parent reviews, they provide an electronic signature. When the last contributor to FAFSA has signed, that person will see this page. In many cases, that will be the parent, but sometimes it could be the student too. This page confirms that the application has been submitted. The student will also get an email that the FAFSA is complete to the email address that they use for their studentaid.gov account. Unless you see this page and receive the email confirming that the FAFSA is submitted, it has not been submitted. Please log back in to studentaid.gov in order to complete the FAFSA. Here are some common application mistakes we see for both the FAFSA and the CADAA. The ones at the bottom apply only to the FAFSA. Now, the student and the parent can't use the same email address to get a studentaid.gov account. The student needs an independent email address to be able to create their account. Students should also be careful on both applications when they're asked the question about a bachelor's degree. If the student selects that they already have a bachelor's degree at the beginning of the 24-25 academic year, they will not be eligible for most forms of federal and state aid. Federal and state financial aid is mostly for undergraduate students who are completing their first bachelor's degree. Parents should watch out to only report the assets they need to report. Retirement plans and the value of the family home are not considered assets for financial aid. The student should use their full legal name that's on record at their high school and also on their college applications. The high school will upload the student's GPA to the web grant system, and if the name on the financial aid application does not match the name that the high school has, it can take a lot more time and energy for the student's application to be processed. Remember, applying for financial aid is not the same thing as applying for college. Each college has their own application process. Applying for financial aid is applying for federal and state programs that will help a student pay for college, but it is not the same thing as applying for college. Students should list several colleges, even if they've already decided they want to attend a specific college. This allows students to price compare the financial aid packages awarded at different colleges before making a final decision. Now for FAFSA specifically, if you start an application and do not complete it within 45 days, the system will purge your application. This means you'll have to start over at the beginning. You can still apply, but you have to start the application over. So make sure you're finishing your application when you start it. I also want to remind you that all contributors to FAFSA must consent to direct data exchange. This is no longer an optional process. If a student or a parent refuses to consent to direct data exchange, the student's application cannot be processed and they cannot receive federal or state financial aid. Here are some helpful tips to help you apply for financial aid. We want to make sure that you apply to at least one California college, even if you are sure that you're going to go out of state. Applying for at least one California college allows you to be able to price compare what you could get to stay in state. Most California state grants are not eligible in other places, so you can't take the Cal Grant or the middle class scholarship with you to another state. You need to apply for a California college, and you need to put that California college on your financial aid application so that you can price compare. We also want to remind you to apply regardless of income. You should never assume you can't get any aid. In fact, 80% of people who apply receive some form of financial aid, so you've got nothing to lose. Now, we do suggest students create one email address for all applications, financial aid applications, college applications, so that you can keep everything in one place. Once you start college, you do get an email address from the college you can use, but we don't recommend you use it for your financial aid because you will lose access to that email address once you graduate. We also want to remind you that you can apply early. Students can begin applying when the application opens at the end of December. Now, the priority deadline for Cal Grant and Middle Class Scholarship is April 2nd, 2024, but some colleges will have earlier deadlines than that. So we want to make sure that all of our students know that they can apply early. Hooray! You've applied for financial aid. That's it, right? College is paid for? Not so fast. There are some other steps you should take while you wait for your application to be processed and while you're waiting for an award package to be provided to you from your college. After completing a FAFSA or a CADAA, students can create a Web Grants for Students account at mygrantinfo.csac.ca.gov. This is a free account that gives students access to information about their state-based financial aid and allows them to get important updates from CSAC. You can find out information here about your state-based awards like Cal Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship. For students who were foster youth, there is additional funding to help them succeed in college. The Chafee Grant for Foster Youth provides a $5,000 award each year for students who qualify. Students do have to complete a separate Chafee application to apply for this award. That's a one-time application. And then they also must complete a FAFSA or a California Dream Act application for each year that they're in school. Unlike other state-based grants, the Chafee Award can actually be taken to schools out of state. So even if you are a foster youth here in California, you could take this grant to a school in another state. Students can receive this grant for up to 5 years. Now you can apply on our website at csac.ca.gov/Chafee, CHAFEE, or you can scan the QR code on this slide. For foster youth in California, there is an additional award called the Foster Youth Access Award. Students must have been a former foster youth after the age of 13, and they need to qualify for Cal Grant B based on income qualifications. This award is up to $6,000 per academic year and can be used for tuition or living expenses. Foster youth students also have a number of other rules for them that help them to break down barriers between them and higher education. These include an extended financial aid deadline of September 3rd, 2024. Foster youth students are also not required to provide a GPA. They don't have to have graduated from high school, and they don't need to have a social security number. A new law passed in 2023 allows community college students to transfer to historically Black colleges and universities with a $5,000 grant. Now, this law is being implemented now. The new law requires that students who accept this grant intend to return to California after graduation as a condition of receiving the award. The CalKids program is a new state program that creates college savings accounts for children in California. This includes students in younger grades as well as newborns. These accounts have startup seed money that can be used for tuition and college expenses. Students do have to opt into the program by claiming their account on calkids.org. This is free money set aside for them by the state of California, but students do have to go and claim that money in order to receive it. We're coming to the end of our presentation today, and so I want to remind you a little bit more about how to access more information. We have QR codes on this slide and links to learn more about CSAC's programs and resources, as well as the California Dream Act application, or the CADAA, and how to access your Web Grants account. If you follow us already on social media, you've probably seen my face before. If not, you should definitely check out CSAC on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Our team is actively sharing resources about financial aid, and we answer questions daily. We're here to help you find out more about how to fund your educational goals. Finally, CSAC is a national voter registration agency. That means we let folks know in our presentations that if they would like to register to vote, they can do so using the QR code on the screen. If you don't have your phone, you can log into a computer after this workshop to register. The website is registertovote.ca.gov. Now, if you are 17 now, but you will be 18 before the next election, you can still register to vote now, ahead of that next election. We hope all of our students, parents, and families who are eligible will register to vote. That's the end of this presentation. I want to thank you for joining us for our pre-recorded Cash for College webinar. I want to remind you that this information is current as of December 18th, 2023, when I'm filming this. There may be revisions to the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application when they are released later in December. If those revisions are significant, we will record a new version of this webinar and put it up on our YouTube channel. If you have additional questions about your financial aid application, please contact our Student Support Department at the email address listed on the screen. They are available to help you answer questions about completing your financial aid application and getting financial aid for college. Thank you again so much. Take care.